I'm ready when you are.
I'm ready. Stand by. In 10, 9, 8, 7,
Hello, my name is Richard Foster. I'm one of the current select board members for the town of Longmeadow. First of all, I'd like to thank LCTV for taking the time to rebroadcast this event. This originally was taped at a senior center open forum that we had, and since that time we decided to update it since we'd already had our town meeting. This year, Paul Santinello and myself kind of got a coalition together where we were talking about the infrastructure. If you've been watching some of our town meetings, you have likely heard a lot of talk about our capital plan and about the need for money and the infrastructure repairs. And we decided that it would likely be good to go on out to the general public and hold some forums to talk about this so we could kind of, I hate to say the word educate, but allow the general public to look inside, deeply inside of the infrastructures that we have in our community so they would understand what the current condition is, what the long-range forecasts are, and what the total needs of our community are as we see them today. Part of this presentation, I'll be talking to you direct, and then I'll be actually talking behind the scenes on some slides that will be presented. We're going to try to go through most of the resource groups and give you a conclusion at the end and talk about possibly how we're going to fund our way out of this infrastructure crisis that we have. It's not only the town of Longmeadow that has a crisis problem on infrastructure. If you read the national news, across our country, towns are fighting this constant need for escalating costs on infrastructure with a shrinking tax base. We're trying to get ahead of it at this point, and it's going to be an uphill battle. So I start by going into the slide presentation. We have the basis of our entire program right now is on 5 studies. 2008, we had a facility study performed for the town. 2009, there was a road study. 2008, there was a water system study. 2008, there also was a sewage system study. And in 2012, which is still ongoing, we have a drainage study being performed. In addition to that, we have an annual updating of a roadway inventory system that is a computerized maintenance management system for our road surfaces that is handled and directed by the Department of Public Works. The purpose of these studies was to bring in engineering professionals to review some of our systems across our community and to issue back a report to the town stating the current condition and what the needs were, and I'm actually looking down the road 15 to 20 years. So there's a tremendous amount of information in these studies. It's long reading, but these studies are online. They're on the town website. If you drill down into Public Works or even on the Select Board page, you'll find many of these studies. In our town, we have major resource groups. We have buildings, we have roads, we have water systems, we have sewage systems, we have drainage systems, including dams, we have sidewalks, and we have a landscape/open space. The landscape open space is basically everything that you see with your eyes as you drive through the community. Buildings. Buildings as an actual resource group is a large amount of our commitment to money in our community. As structures age, components require replacement such as heating systems, roofs, plumbing systems, and other items prone to wear and tear. All structures have an estimated life cycle. At the end of a structure's life cycle, it may be rebuilt or rehabilitated. Now, that brings up an interesting question, why some structures you can actually go back and rehabilitate cheaper than you can rebuild them. It really depends on the type of structure and how much the infrastructure or inside of the structure that you have, utilities, stuff that's in the walls, and the actual makeup of the whole building. A typical warehouse may last for many, many, many life cycles because you can just basically replace everything inside. It's not concealed in walls. You can put a new steel structure on the outside. You can put a new roof on. So your steel membrane is never going to stop. When you get down to a brick and mortar type structure, you can do a lot of inside work, but when you get to the outside fabric, the mortar starts to deteriorate 50, 60 years down the road, especially with acid rain and the different rain elements getting in it. And so you start to escalate the cost of rebuilding it. If you had to tear off the entire a brick facade on a building and rebuild it, it would likely be be a lot cheaper just to start over and build new. So that's a decision that's made by the engineering staff based on the type of building, and these are some of the things that we will go towards as we go down the road. Now, we recently rebuilt the high school. It's brand new. The high school now will be in place for 50 to 60 years, somewhere in that range of cycle. But in the interim, we will be doing a lot of major structural repairs to it. The roofs, we may actually have to replacement windows. We'll have major structural things inside, but the core structure will likely last 50 to 70 years, somewhere up into that range. The performance of routine and preventative maintenance will ensure an adequate life cycle on any structure. It's a very important part of this puzzle. If you have adequate routine and preventative maintenance, your life structure on a building will live its intended purpose. If you do not have adequate preventative maintenance, you will quickly see the structure fail early, and you'll start to have catastrophic spot failures. You'll be reactive in maintenance. It will cost you a lot more money. On the road system, we have three basic forms of maintenance. We have routine maintenance, we have preventative maintenance, and we have rehabilitation. Routine maintenance, shown on the slide, this shows some cracking in an asphalt surface, and you notice the black surface on top of the crack. That is a sealant, that's crack sealing. This falls under routine maintenance. A road surface over time will fail, it will crack. The asphalt starts to dry out, it becomes brittle. The UV damage from the sun affects it, and it actually will crack. This can also be caused by soils movement in underneath the asphalt. Swelling and contracting will actually force it to crack also. So what we do, we seal these cracks to prevent moisture from getting into the subbase on our road. Undoubtedly, moisture is the #1 enemy of any road surface out there. If we can prevent the moisture from getting into the subbase, the road will last much longer. We will likely get a good life cycle on it. This particular slide shows a combination of failures starting to take place. Now, obviously you've seen this around our own community. There's some large block cracks, and then there's some kind of multiple cracks along the lines where the wheels of the tires, or the tires actually hit the road. Now, in a normal repair sequence, you notice this road does not look like it's been crack sealed, so this one has not had the adequate preventative maintenance, or the adequate routine maintenance, so now we're moving into a preventative maintenance mode. Now, we've already shortened the life cycle on this road bed by not doing the first maintenance, because now we're allowing water to get into the subbase, and it's further cracking the road base. Now, when you look where the wheel marks are, where the actual vehicles are, you'll notice there's much more deterioration taking place. That is because that is where the weight for the vehicles hits the road, and if the water is in the subbase, it starts to lose its structural strength, and it can crack the pavement with the weight of a vehicle. This road here is at the point where it can be salvaged now with what we call a mill and an overlay. A mill is you have a big milling machine that comes in, it takes off about 2 inches of asphalt, and then in turn, when it's done, you put down a brand new layer of 2 inches of asphalt. And then your road basically has been rebuilt to a certain point in time where you'll get a future life cycle out of it. In this case, we will have to do some more structural repairs where the wheel marks are, because that's going to require cutting the asphalt out, actually going in and redoing the basin under there to provide structural strength for the overlay. This section of roadway is what we consider total rehabilitation. This roadway has totally failed. It's past routine maintenance, it's past preventative maintenance. This is the most expensive form of road maintenance that we have, because in this case, this road will have to be completely taken apart. All the asphalt will have to be stripped off. You'll have to check the subbase material to see if it's structurally sound. You may have to add new base. You have to compact it and bring it back up to grade. You must make sure that you do not have any water that's leaking in under the road bed. You'll notice on the slide it says road rehabilitation, and then I have the word sponge. I would like you to think of a road base as a sponge, the very hard type of sponge that you may have around your home, that when you press on it when it's dry, you can hardly compress it, but when it's wet, it compresses very easily. This is the same thing that happens under a road bed. if water gets into the subbase and vehicles go over the top and the asphalt structure is not sufficient enough to hold the weight of the vehicle, it will actually start to push down the asphalt. It'll crack the asphalt, and it'll pump back and forth on the moisture that's in the soils below it. And what happens, the fines, the particles in the soil it supports, it actually starts to wash away. Sometimes you'll see mud streaks coming out of cracks on a roadway, and this is the fines or the mud coming out of the road. This is a sure sign that you've got water there, and it's a sure sign that the asphalt is moving, and potholes are just around the corner at this case. But this is the worst type of situation you have. This is also the most expensive situation you have for repair. This shows a basic asphalt life chart. On the vertical side to the left, you have the different categories of structural condition on your asphalt. It goes from failed to excellent. And as you go out on the timeline, on the horizontal one on the bottom, it shows the amount of years that an asphalt surface will last. Obviously, it's very hard to predict when a road will totally fail. But over the years, they've got a lot of good background information based on average mixes on asphalt and average car loadings, and they project out. And this particular chart shows, as you follow the red line coming down, it will show you in about 10 years, your asphalt at that point is in fair condition, and if you do not do some major work at that point, you can see for the next 2 or 3 years it goes from fair condition into failed condition. On that red line, as you're coming down, you'll notice up on the top there's a little jagged black line that takes off, and it says $2 for PP here. Well, the PP is pavement preservation. This is what we were talking about on the mill and overlays and the crack sealing. If you stop at this point of the life cycle on a road and start to do adequate maintenance, you can extend the life cycle on that road considerably, as you see the difference between the red line and the jagged black ones. You also notice that the jagged black one never really gets back up to full standard, because basically what you're doing at this point, you're doing preventative maintenance. You're not doing a total reconstruction. The point worth noting is the fact that if you apply the adequate form of maintenance at the $2 range, or at the first markup there where it's $2 for PPE, if you slide down the line and show no maintenance, when it gets down to the failed rate, which is 3 to 4 years later, you're up to $12 to $16 for the same unit of work. This is why preventative maintenance is crucial for asphalt surfaces. Also, it's crucial is the original design and the drainage layouts and the structure of the road. If it's not built to take the structural load that we're placing on it, it will fail prematurely. Excuse me, approximately 75.4 miles of roadways in town. Our roadways are broken into 2 sections. There's 25 are arterial, and that is your main roads like Bliss, Longmeadow Street, the major arteries, Converse, the major arteries where you see most of the trucks. 75% are residential streets. That's back in front of your house and my house. Arterial roads will generally last 10 to 12 years. This is generally, this of course, there's a lot of factors that go into this generalization. This is with adequate maintenance also. Residential roads, you'll have to repave them every 12 to 15 years. Now, sometimes you can push a residential road a little bit farther out because you don't have the heavy trucks that are loading out. You have residential traffic. Now, it will crack, it will need preventative maintenance, but it will not start to form potholes like you get out on the main roads. Standard mill and overlay, as we mentioned before, at this point runs about $250,000 to $300,000 per mile. And this does not include utility work and under the roadbed. This basically says we're going to do some minor drainage improvements. We're going to mill 2 inches off, and we're going to replace it and go ahead and do all of our crosswork signage and all that as going down the roadbed, as opposed to a total reconstruction. We're coming up and we're going to do some major work on William Street this coming year, where we're going to actually do the drainage work down and under. We're going to replace some of the drainage pipes. We might be replacing water pipes, as we just did down on Maple Street, and the sewage lines. This is when you get into the major work. Your $200,000 to $300,000 range quickly goes up to $400,000 to $500,000 to $600,000 range minimum when you start doing major utility work. We need to repair approximately 7 miles of roadways annually. This is based on the life cycle, the anticipated life cycle of the arterial roads and the residential roads. We right now are likely doing less than 1 mile. We have some money in our base budget towards asphalt, and we also get the state money, which is coming in at $450,000 a year. I believe this year we're on tap for a possible increase to $750,000. In addition to just paving the road, the Department of Public Works also has that routine maintenance that they must perform. That's the simple drainage repairs, that's the crack sealing, some pothole repairs, the basic routine maintenance. Roadsides, the system of our road system the size of ours in this town, Mike should be spending somewhere around $500,000 a year on routine type maintenance, in addition to repaving about 7 miles. And 7 miles and times the 300,000 gets us up to $3 to $4 million range. Our water systems. Our water system is comprised of 99 miles of water lines of various sizes. Our system has 5,700 meters and 1,100 fire hydrants. 35% of our system lines are 4 to 6 inches. This is a problem. The 4 to 6 inch lines at one time were perfectly satisfactory for a community of our size. As we have grown out, the standards have changed, and now the current standards, you want 8-inch water lines running through your residential areas, not only for service of proper pressure to the homes, but also for fire protection. Now, we have some areas in town that we have the 4 and 6 inch lines. 6-inch lines have been tested. The pressure is great enough that we won't have any problems for fire protection. And in the case where we have a couple of sections of 4-inch lines left, our fire chief has alternate plans set up to where he knows if he has to go into a community with a small line, he will pull water from another area. They've worked it out. They have advanced plans. This is in the process as we finally get the money up so we can replace these 4 and 6 inch lines. Over the years, water lines will corrode, and they will also become blocked with mineral deposit. This is a very, very natural occurrence. It takes place in every water system in America. You'll notice as you go through the community, you will see the Department of Public Works out flushing our fire mains. They're not really just wasting water, folks. They are flushing the mains to get the impurities out. When they open a major valve like that, it allows some of the sedimentation in the lines to be flushed out. This also keeps our pressures up in case we have a fire. We can have full capacity lines. So I realize there's a lot of water expended in this process, but this is a mandatory process of maintaining a proper water system in our community, is a periodic flushing of our main arteries through town. Sewage system. We have 83 miles of sewage lines and 2,100 manholes. Most of the sewage lines are 50 plus years old. Sewage lines are a little different than water lines. These lines are subject to root intrusion, misalignment, leakage, and infiltration. Infiltration would be rainwater going down and getting into our sewage systems. A lot of the sewage lines, because they're gravity flow, except for the pressure ones, they're made with looser joints, especially over the years. You can have a lot of it's old terracotta pipe. And then you have cement pipe and asphalt pipe. There's a variety of different pipes, down to cast iron and everything else it's used for. But generally speaking, a lot of the old sewage lines can experience leakage. Like our water lines, these lines will need replacement and rehabilitation. And when we're talking about our sewage system, we have some inherent weaknesses in our system, and I think I'll touch on that a little bit later. One of our main problems right now is the north interceptor coming down the north end of town. It's between our town and actually Route 91. It's inaccessible by many points, and Mike will be planning in the next couple of years to replace that interceptor line. It's going to be about $1 million to replace that line. Right now, as I say, some of it's up on piers, and they'll be doing some redirection so they can get in to do proper preventative maintenance on it in future generations. Drainage systems. Drainage system infrastructure requires a considerable degree of routine and preventative maintenance if it's to be kept operational. It needs a lot of inspections to prevent catastrophic and uncontrolled failures. Uncontrolled stormwater can be very destructive. As you've seen, flash flooding and all, once water gets loose, it's very aggressive on the landscape. It can take large amounts of siltation and yards away once you get a line that breaks out. This is a typical failure of a drainage system. The pipe that you're looking at, I didn't measure, but they say it's at least a 2-foot pipe. And you can see the amount of dirt that's been scoured out as this line started to open up and spewed the stormwater. This is gravity feed water, but you know, based on some of the storms we are receiving, millions of gallons of water be flowing towards the Connecticut River from our town. And this is what happens when you have a lack of maintenance or you have a catastrophic failure. This is another catastrophic failure. Now, this problem originally started with just a little, the T section of asphalt or concrete right in the middle of your picture. That's called a head wall and pipe section. That section should be sitting on firm ground, and out in front of that there should be a rock splash basin for the water to splash against, so it's not aggressively tearing up the banks. This started many years ago, this failure, when it started undermining that T section, and eventually that section fell and broke and actually dropped down into the ravine. After that, each successive session just kept eating away more and more soils until it actually is backed up all the way to the top one that you can see. We've got we got 3 sections of failed pipe, and then the top one is sticking out of the ground, and if not corrected, it will eventually keep eating the soils away until it hits a point where it can no longer aggressively take the soils away, or it hits the point of origin. This, by the way, this problem has been solved in our community. This is an interesting slide. This is likely a 24-inch pipe, and you can see the shoes of one of our workers standing on top. I would imagine this was our drainage inspection crew when they were out checking our systems, and this pipe is totally dysfunctional. It is totally silted in. You can see there's even organic stuff that's growing actually in the pipe. So all of the water that originally flowed through this 24-inch pipe is now being diverted somewhere else. This is a drainage structure failure that's in our roadway. This is an inlet. I believe this one was on William Street. This inlet should be flush or just barely below the surface of the asphalt, because water is intended to flow into this unrestricted. This inlet has failed. Whenever you see an inlet like this, any place in our community that's tipped down and is starting to slide down, I would recommend you call Public Works and report the location. These are the items that Mike needs to be out and be able to address. You have noticed this last year. He's repaired several of them on William Street, and they currently are replacing a bad one on Longmeadow Street down near towards Enfield. Sidewalks. We have 70 miles of sidewalks in our town that provide recreational opportunities and also play a vital role in accessibility. There are very explicit guidelines for repair and upkeep of sidewalk in public areas. Asphalt used on concrete sidewalks is for temporary emergency repairs only. It should never have been placed out there and left in place other than an emergency. Again, this is a very large infrastructure problem that we have in our community. It's very difficult to keep our sidewalks in top-notch condition without having sufficient funding. This is a typical sidewalk failure in our community. This one is on Warren Street, and I picked this one because this shows a couple, 3 problems. It shows a tree that likely should not be planted where it is, and it shows the result of that tree planted where it shouldn't have been, an upheaving of the sidewalk. This sidewalk actually is likely 9 to 10 inches peaked up, and you can see they filled in the one side with asphalt. There's no cure on this, folks. I mean, you have to take the sidewalk out, or take the tree out, take all the roots out, and redo the entire sidewalk, and then never plant another tree there, or especially a variety of tree that can uproot a sidewalk and damage an asphalt surface. This is the same tree. I just turned around and shot a picture up in the air. These are the utility lines going through the top section on the tree. This is not a pretty picture by any means, and it's kind of dysfunctional because this, when we had this ice storm, we found out what trees can do around our utility lines. This again is the same tree. I would imagine this large section of the tree was lost when we had our October snowstorm a couple of years ago, the ice storm and all. This tree shouldn't be there. It's ill-placed, at least the variety of tree. As you go through our community, you will see this at numerous locations where the sidewalks have been damaged by some of our beautiful trees. And they are beautiful trees, but they're in the wrong spot if we're going to have a sidewalk with them. Landscape and open spaces. These are the spaces all through our town where visual quality plays a crucial role. It's what you see when you walk through the community. It's the impression that you receive. The condition of our roads, sidewalks, and the general view shed represent our community. Folks, let me repeat that. The condition of our roads, sidewalks, and the general view shed represent our community. I know we have wonderful people, we have wonderful businesses, we have wonderful schools, but the general public, when they drive through a community, they will look at certain factors to do an evaluation on a community. Our town manager stated in his employment interview that bad roads are like missing teeth. And at that point I told him, I said, we have some missing teeth. It's a visual quality thing. This is a sign that's located down at the pull-off area near Bark Hall and Route 5, or Longmeadow Street. Actually, it's a good way to get us out of our budget problems, because the first offense on littering in our town is $5,500 fine. And the second one is $15,000. Now what I'm going to do, the next slide I'm going to show you is going to show where this sign is located. This is the same parking area. This is the condition of it this spring. You can see our guardrails are beat back, they're pushed back, there's debris all down through, there's trees, and all the way down at the end of the parking lot, if you can see that black sliver of pipe, that is the actual sign that I took the picture of. This is visual quality, folks. This shows what our community is like. This again is visual quality. This is at the same location. This guardrail assembly took years to fail. It's been years failing. The concrete has totally dissolved, presumably from the salts that we use on the road, which is normal. But this is non-functional. It's an eyesore in our community. This is up near the tennis courts, up near the high school. This again is just a lack, I hate to say it, but it's a lack of maintenance. We've got some pressure treated timbers that have totally failed. They've left exposed rebar. Visual quality. These are some of the factors that affect our total quality of the town, is the visual aspects. This sign, this shot I put in just for you, just basically take a look at it and tell me what you can see wrong. And I know we don't have an interactive audience, so I'll tell you what I see. I first of all see 3 or 4 signs that are bent and misaligned. I see the curb broken on the little traffic island, or at the bottom or the bottom center of your picture. I also see grass growing up along the curb line. Now I do understand grass on a curb line will take place occasionally because there's a lot of maintenance required, but it still is a visual quality aspects on a road maintenance problem. Resource needs. These prices represent some of the known factors at this point from our engineering studies. You have heard during this political time of the year a lot of talk about us not having an infrastructure plan and not knowing what we're doing and not knowing where we're going. I can tell you from my point of view, we have a lot of resource information. We have a lot of studies. We know exactly where we need to go. The only thing is we do not have the money to get there. That is the one problem that will have to be worked on this year and the future years, is how do we fund the resource deficiencies that we are already aware of in our community. Currently, we have an estimated $27 million backlog in our road system. This is based on the study that was done in 2009 and has been updated since. Remember, we went back to the asphalt curve. We know what the asphalt is doing. We know it will fail if it's not maintained. We need approximately $3 to $4 million a year being spent on our road system. This is above and beyond routine maintenance. This is the $3,000 to $4,000 needs to be put in the 6, 7, or 8 miles of new asphalt that we need to replace every year. Our water systems currently have $55 million worth of identified deficiencies. Replacement of 6-inch and 3-inch or 4-inch water lines is extremely expensive, because quite often they're under the roadbed, so they're coupled in with a major road project, so it gets quite expensive to do that type of work. Our sidewalks, we currently have an estimated backlog in work of $5 million on our sidewalks. $5 million, folks, just to repair the defective sidewalks that we have identified right now. This does not include retreeing or any of those other factors. This just includes the physical replacement of the concrete sidewalk. Excuse me. Structures. We currently have identified in our studies approximately $123 million worth of structural improvements required in our community. Now, I will add that two of the major parts of this are school projects. I think they're about 48 million or 20 to 48 apiece. So a lot of that is estimated for school replacements. Sewage. Our sewage system is currently being worked on by DPW. They're working almost every day out there with a sewage truck and doing more inspections on the sewage lines and building the database. The current estimate right now on sewage repairs is to the tune of $75 million. This could go up and it could go down, but it's in the multi-millions of dollars worth of identified work right now. As I say, sewage lines are down deep into the road beds, so it's very expensive to repair the sewage lines. Drainage currently being evaluated. This is an ongoing project. We do have 10 of the top 10 projects in drainage are estimated at $2.5 million. Two of these top 10 projects have been taken care of in the last year and a half by the select board and by the town at the town meeting. Two of the number 1 and number 2 drainage projects have been taken care of. The money part. The average home value in Longmeadow is $342,000. Just for information's sake, a $1 million override would increase the tax burden on an average homeowner by approximately $168 per year. But keep in mind, our current identified deficiencies are well in excess of $200 million. This is the size of the problem that we face in the community, is how do we repair our infrastructure, keep our tax base in line, and still move forward. On the conclusion, we need to increase our capital improvement program to $4 to $5 million. We currently spend $1 million or 2% of our revenues on our infrastructure improvements. This figure was arbitrarily selected several years ago. The figure was not correct at that point, and it's not even close to being correct now. If we looked at national studies, international firms and national firms figured that they need 2% to 4% of the appraised value of their property being devoted into preventative and routine maintenance every year. In our case, we have a $1 billion resource in our community. We would need $20 to $40 million to properly maintain our infrastructure. I realize, and you realize, we are never ever going to have that much money. But if we can throttle back and start to balance our expenditures, we will start to make improvements towards our infrastructure repairs. It'll take a combination. We will have debt exclusion, which you're familiar with on a high school. That was debt exclusion project. Once the debt is paid off, the tax base goes back to where it was before that debt was imposed. The only unfortunate thing we have right now, folks, is that the size of some of these expenditures we currently have on is the debt exclusion was going to go out. I think the high schools go out to 2041. The first major reduction in debt exclusion that we have on the town right now, I think, is at 7 years out, when we will lift up, I think it's close to $1 million of money. So we need a balanced approach to revenue and spending. I stressed this before. We must have a balanced approach. It can't just all go in one direction. We have to make sacrifices and put money where it needs to be spent in our community. We must meet the needs of our community and not just the wants. For all of my years in facility management, I've always told people when they come in and they say, well, I need to buy this, I need this, and I need that. And I said, well, fine, come back to me after you've explained the total package of needs versus wants. And I said, some of the stuff, obviously, you just want because it's nice to have. And I said, when you can give me a demonstrated need package and a correlation with all the priorities that we are faced with in our corporation, then we'll consider that for appropriation this coming year. Quite often it gets people really thinking when they have to go back and justify a purchase and come up and show you how that fits the needs of the community and overall fits the needs of the community. The priorities in our community are tremendous. And to pick the number one project is a very difficult task, as you can well imagine, even from running a household. You've seen the size of our studies. We have multi-million dollars worth of identified deficiencies. It's going to take us years to correct these. But we will, as one of the select board members has said several times, we will do it like you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. There is no magic pill. I wish there was, but there is no magic pill for this. It's going to take time, and it's going to take people working very hard, and it's going to take sacrifice by a lot of people in our community, including some of our departments. We may have to reduce programs back. I mean, there's millions of different options, and they'll have to explore each one very, very carefully and very slowly until we can find what we consider our magic pill. That is in the conclusion of this. My name is Richard Foster. On the slide, I'm showing you my email address at longmeadow.org. I would encourage you, if you have any questions, to please go ahead and drop me an email. Stop by and see me anytime. Give me a phone call if you choose. I'd love to talk about the infrastructure. We have a lot to talk about. I can tell you right now that our engineering department is progressively moving forward, aggressively moving forward on some projects, some drainage projects, some road projects. I will hear the battle cry of Maple Road, I'm sure, out there. Well, Maple Road had some failure aspects in it. It was not a typical project. It was kind of the perfect storm type of project. We let the contract a little bit late in the year, and then we hit unpredictable, unforeseen site conditions. This will happen, folks. We will occasionally have slight failures like this. I wish I could tell you we wouldn't, but sometimes when you go digging in the ground, you'll find site conditions that you weren't aware of to start with. It's been my pleasure to bring this information to you. I am very, very interested in the infrastructure of our community. I sense the needs, I sense how large they are, and I know realistically how long it's going to take us to repair. The sole purpose of this session that we've taped and are presenting to you is to allow you to understand that there is a lot of work going on behind the scenes, and the community needs your support if we're going to get proper funding. As I say, I thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, please drop me a line.